The region of San Gerardo de Dota is well known for its wildlife conservation, the protection of the cloud forest, and also for the nature-oriented tourism, right? With smaller facilities, not big development, but for mushrooms is one of the greatest areas. This area known as Cerro de la Muerte has different altitudes as well as very well preserved patches of forests, right? The combination of high humidity and colder temperatures is what we are looking for when we are foraging for mushrooms. Right here we have in the group of the Cortinarius genus. There are several species of Costa Rican purplish mushrooms that turn rusty, right? So we still do not have clear knowledge of this group in Costa Rica, Cortinarius. You can tell them from other genus because they have like a veil that covers the gills when they're young. This veil then falls and is known as the cortin or veil. Right in this specimen probably you can see that after it is matured, then rests of that veil are going to be found here in the stipe. Cortinarius. So one of the things we have to take in account when we look for mushrooms in Costa Rica is that tropical forests are more diverse, but we don't find like species that are very abundant. They are rare. Lots of species are going to be found in small amounts, right? So it's what we call like a tropical sort of paradox, that the abundant is rare and the rare is abundant, which means that there are very few species that are abundant and there are lots of species that are rare.
Oh.
See, here we have another mushroom. This is another milk cap. You can see the latex coming out when you cut the gills. Little drops. Bacterius. Sometimes 2, 3.
Amanita pantarina.
3 weeks. Yeah, Hallingiana. Yeah, Roy Halling is a American mycologist, after which the species before known as Panterina now is being called here in Costa Rica. Lactiflus deceptivus, it's in the milk cap family, the family of Rusula and Lactarius. This mushroom is edible. It's considered to be edible. It is kind of acrid or mildly hot when you try it, but when it's cooked, it's the black Rusula, the black gilled Rusula. They turn really black. Rusula nigricans is the scientific name. An edible species, Lacaria lacata, the deceiver.
And it's edible.
Yep. A lot of people is worried about picking up the fruiting bodies, right? Because they think they might harm the mushroom, right? If it's not made systematically and constantly, probably picking some mushrooms is not going to affect the species, because the mycelium is of course underground and this is just the sexual phase that not necessarily means that you're going to damage the organism. But it's true that if we don't do it moderately, we might have an impact in the species. That's why people recommend to leave some mushrooms always, that when you pick up some fruiting bodies, leave the young ones to spore, or not to pick the entire colony that you find. Right?
And the basket, the wicker basket, helps
Exactly.
spread the spores for the mushroom.
Of course, even it has been found that some species might be favored by people picking them, and that way spreading their spores. For example, psilocybe mushrooms have been start to be found more commonly around university campuses in North America, because it seems like they were pickers that were very successful.
Yeah, people spraying the spores as a scientific project.
Exactly. Another one with a very pleasant
Amethyst laccaria.
amethyst, right?
Laccaria.
With a very pleasant taste. Not a lot of value as an edible, but still make a good omelette. So laccarias are mostly fruiting bodies with very spaced gills. That is one of the characteristics that allow us to take them apart from other species like Cortinarius, or of the genus Cortinarius, that sometimes have the same purple colors, right? So we have to be careful on that. And the spacement of the gills allowed us to identify it. So I just picked the as epiphytes, which means that they are growing on top of other plants, but they're not parasites. They are just there. But in this part of the year, the rain dropped them a lot, and you can find them in the ground.
Bromelia.
Bromeliads, yeah.
Bromelias.
Bromeliads are, as I was saying, it's a family of tropical plants in which we find the pineapple. It's another rusula, a little bit already past. As you can see, all their purple inhabitant of the cloud forest in Costa Rica is the lepista, known as Pimpinelas in Spain, or Pie Azul, also Pie Bleu in France. The lepista nuda is probably the most famous member of this group. But in the tropics, we also have others yet to identify, probably new species, or even some other species like Lepista sordida that is very commonly mistaken by for Lepista nuda. These ones are mushrooms with, differently from Laccarias, they have their gills that are very tight, right? As you can see, this is an edible species in the genus Lepista. This is Amanita. Amanita bruneolocularis is the scientific name of this native Amanita species. It has the annulus, it has a clear vulva, and the scales on the top of the cap allow me to identify it as Amanita bruneolocularis. One of the characteristics of this mushroom is the color of the annulus having a gray stripe. Bruneo locularis, unknown uses.
No known edible.
No. Same lepista. It seems like tomorrow's breakfast is going to be great. Pure bleu. One of the characteristics of some mushrooms is what is called the hygrophonous reaction, or the hygrophonous fruiting bodies, which means that they are going to change color depending on the level of water that the fruiting body has absorbed. So you're going to see them actually changing from more bright, translucent tones to pale colorations, depending on the degree of water it has been absorbed. Probably the most related form of nutrition for mushrooms, for us, for people, is decomposers, right? Decomposers are those mushrooms that are feeding on organic materials, dead trees, fallen leaves, dead corpse, etc. There's another way of nutrition for mushrooms that is parasitic mushrooms, right? These mushrooms are going to be living on living organisms, right? Feeding on living organisms. And the third and most amazing for me of the nutrition strategies of mushrooms are the ones that are mycorrhizic. This means that they are going to be feeding on sugars that the roots of the trees provide them. On the other hand, the mushroom is going to give certain nutrients and also protection from disease to the root of the system, of the plant. So it's a symbiotic relation in which both get benefits. And one example of mycorrhizic mushrooms in the group of the boletes is this. This one is kind of twisted, but it's a great edible. Oh, yeah. It's our beloved Boletus quercophilus. This one is a small guy. He was having trouble growing there with that root. But this mushroom, no matter how you try, if you don't have an oak forest, an oak tropical forest, you're not going to see it. So what's important about these mushrooms is that if we want to preserve them, we need to preserve the forest, right? There is no other way to get this delight.
It can't be domesticated.
No, well, it might be in the future, but
not currently.
Not currently. Truth is that mycorrhizic mushrooms are not going to be easily grown in artificial conditions, but just found in the natural environment. So see, it was kind of twisted, but it's the closest relative to Boletus edulis, or the porcini mushroom, that we have here in Costa Rica.
Cortinarius.
You can see in this young one, the veil sometimes called like visit. This visit cap is typical of the Cortinarius. You can see the veil. A lot of species of Cortinarius yet to be described in Costa Rica. Like in the Ascomycetes group,
You can't see them.
Some of the less known groups. But yes, it is calculate that the total amount of mushrooms in Costa Rica might be up to 65,000 species.
And only 2,000 have been properly identified?
So far, like 2,000 and some. This is another bolete that is typical of Costa Rican cloud forest, and impossible to to confuse, right, with other species because of the very bright yellow color of the pores. Aureoboletus auriporus. Auriporus, or golden pores, right? It's another species that we ignore if it might be edible or not. Truth is that it seems really delicious, but not yet proven. They are like
Deceivers, they blend in with the leaves.
but they might be hundreds.
Coral fungi, very common.
Well, very diverse too, yeah. So, in general terms, we can say coral fungi is poorly known in Costa Rica, as most of the groups. This is another Auriporus. See, it seems like fleshy, has all characteristics of a good edible. Lots of bullets. When you are going to eat them, you take the tubes out because they are not as tasty, and just the context is cooked in this type. But in this case, as I was saying, we still aren't sure if this is an edible species. If it ends up being one, I will be very glad because it's very abundant.
You tried it yourself?
No. I'll wait until somebody tries. This species of Amanita is Amanita costarricensis. It's a species described for Costa Rica, probably also found in Panama. It's well known or easy to identify, I mean, by the scales in form of pyramids it has on the top. Also on a black or dark brown coloration, right? So Amanitas most of the times are handled with care because there are lots of species that are toxic, right? So this specimen can be confused with other whitish, brownish amanitas like Amanita abrupta that is also has a bulb in the base of the stipe. But in this case, the shape of the black pyramid scales allowed us to identify is a species for Costa Rica, described by Roy Halling and Gregory Mueller, Amanita costarricensis. Another rusula, this is probably Cyanosanta, one of the rusulas that change a lot in colors depending on the weather, especially if it's very rainy, it might wash out the colorations.
I see this one everywhere.
Yeah, that rusula. Conia with yellowish to orange colors. This one has been washed. Oops, but you can see the presence of the annulus as well as the yellowish stipe. Some varieties of this species are eaten in Mexico, But still, Amanita is a group that you have to take with a lot of respect because there are lots of toxic species. Some people just recommend not to eat any Amanita just to be sure we're not going to mistake it with a poisonous
What
one.
kind was this again?
Amanita, the variety is inquinata, Amanita flavoconia, variety inquinata. Oh, nice. This one seems like the chestnut bolet, Gyrodon castaneus, another edible species of bolet. Most of these bolet species are mycorrhizic species, just like the Boletus quercophilus we found before. Gyrodon Gyrodon castaneus. That one is a rusula, probably.
Ursula here?
No, this one, that one is another Aureoboletus, another golden pore bolet. And the whitish is the rusula. You can see there is a right there. There is a wide variety of tones and colorations in rusula. Sometimes it might be the same species, it just has a variety of tones. It's a rusula that has been predated by some animal. It's very common to find animals' prints or signs of predation in the mushrooms. See, that's the Rusula nigricans turning totally black, and another Flauconia. So mycologists dedicate their time to very precisely cut certain parts of the fruiting bodies in order to see the cystidia, to see the spores that are microscopic structures. Also to see shape and size of the spores is useful for the mushroom species ID. That's costarricensis. As you can see, this one has lost the scales, right? Because of the way in which it was growing, sometimes they lose them.
Puffball.
Oh yeah. Lycoperdon perlatum.
Watch this. Oh, this one's
Empty.
all out of spores.
Already empty. Lycoperdon perlatum. Edible species of puffball. This one. When it's white inside, it's still edible. But when they get old, they mature the spores, and it becomes brownish and soft, right? So that's when it's not edible anymore.
Golden bullet.
Golden pore. Auriporus means golden pores. So sometimes the names of mushrooms are supposed to be helpful, right? To identify them, giving a tip or mentioning some diagnostic characteristic, like auriporus, which means golden pores in the case of that bolet. But some other times mycologists miss it.
Do you have psilocybe mushrooms in the cloud forest?
Here in the cloud forest I've never found, even though in terms of the geographic distribution of some psilocybic mushrooms, they are expected to cure, especially caerulescens, psilocybe caerulescens, which is known for this type of environment. Despite the fact that Psilocybe cubensis, which is the Costa Rican or the psilocybic mushroom that is more abundant and known in Costa Rica, occurs in lower lands, there might be psilocybic mushrooms in the cloud forest, but I haven't found it.
And cubensis is more like grassland mushroom.
Yeah, it grows in the manure of cattle. Manure, you say, or manure?
Manure.
Manure. Thank you.
Same.
My pronunciation is not very good.
It's better than my Spanish pronunciation.
Another rusula, and this group can be identified by the chalk-like stipe, which is like kind of breaky in the texture of the stipe is sometimes described as chalk, right? So when you throw it, it's going to break like a chalk, like pulverized. Phylum Commune, worldwide distribute, and probably one of the most common mushrooms in the world is the Schizophyllum commune. As its name says, is the common Schizophyllum. Very easy to identify due to the shape of the gills. Schizophyllum commune. Looks like the European vaginata, lack of vulva, the whitish, I'm sorry, the lack of annulus or ring, the whitish type, striated cap, Amanita fuliginiodisca. The thing is that vaginata is a group with some edible species, but not yet known for this species. It's a unknown toxicity or edibility. Ah, well, yes, I know this one. This one is called Philotopsis nidulans. It's a species that is recognized by the yellowish to orange cap, the lack of stipe, right, and the yellow gills. Philotopsis nidulans.
What's this?
Laetiporus, probably in that group, but I'm not sure exactly. In the group of the chicken of the woods, but I'm not sure this one which species is. Hygrocybe, there is one species that is quite common here. It's called Hygrocybe miniata or Hygrocybe miniata. Very bright red color is typical of this species. Another typical species of bolete in the cloud forest of the Talamanca mountain range is Lexinum carthagoense. This species has a yellowish base, very bright yellow, impossible to confuse with other members of the group. Unfortunately, we don't know if this species is edible, but since most of Lexinums worldwide are edible, as well as there is no toxic species of Lexinum known. We suspect it might be of a great potential as food.
Few of the edibles for later.
I have a 2-for-1 if you want to take advantage. I'm selling these two posters in $10 for both if you are interested. Some of the species we saw, Lepista, the edible Lepista, also the Lacarius, the Lactiflus, we saw it too, and then some Cortinarius. This species is edible actually, but we saw some others that are non-edible. We saw Amanita fulgineodisca, Amanita costarricensis, Amanita flavoconia, Amanita bruneolocularis. Some of the species of Amanitas we saw. See, this is the chanterelle relative, Cantarellus ignicolor. This is the Lacaria lacata, Lepista nuda, Lacaria amethystina, and Marasmius tropalis. These are the 5 edible species that we collect this week. Oh well, 6 with the other Lactiflus and 7 with the Boletus quercophilus. This one we saw, remember the mycorrhizae? The one we saw, it was kind of twisted, but it's the relative of Boletus edulis, the porcini mushroom. We saw this one, Amanita pantherina, the one that I told you that is already known as Hallingiana now, Amanita Hallingiana.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.